A very warm welcome in a kind of mild autumn evening here in Zurich. Very warm welcome to everyone at home at their computers, and a warm welcome to the students too, who are joining us here in the lecture hall. So warm regards from ETH Zurich to everyone. And of course, welcome to Judith Kedebe and Toya Petzola, who will be sharing their insight on social values as one principle of agroecology and the contribution to the transition to sustainable food systems. For those who have been already several times here, you know the procedure, but for those who are new, it's maybe nice to have a short introduction of me before I then hand over to Judith and Toya on the lecture here and on agroecology in particular. Now, same as last time, the clicker works in the test, but when it's real, the clicker seems not to work. So agroecology, sustainable food systems are connected, and sustainable food systems are in the core also of the 17 SDGs. They do connect to all of the SDGs at different levels, at levels of food security, but very much also on an environmental level, but not least also on social dimensions. And that's what we are talking about today. Agroecology for food system transformation. What is agroecology? It's at the same time a scientific discipline, a set of practices, and a social movement. As a science, it studies how different components of the agroecosystem interact. As a set of practice, it seeks sustainable farming systems that optimize and stabilize yields. And as a social movement, it pursues multifunctional roles of agriculture. It promotes social justice. It nurtures identity and culture. Here, as a reminder, the very long and complex definition of agroecology, which mirrors also the different dimensions which are covered by agroecology. It's about the use of natural resources, limit the use of purchased inputs, promotes closed cycles, but it also is rooted and builds on the importance of local knowledge and the exchange between local knowledge and more conventional scientific methods to develop new solutions in a participatory process. Agroecological approaches do recognize that agri-food systems are coupled social ecological systems. And I guess that's a very key thing also for our today's topic. Again, we use the 13 principles of agroecology. That's our focus. Also later then for the student lectures, the student will work on selected principles and study them a bit more in detail. They do connect, some of them do connect more with the agroecosystems. Others have a stronger connection with the food system as such as social values and diets, which we're looking at today. And at the same time, they have different influence on the transformative power. Some have more a contribution to incremental change, whereas other principles address the transformational impact of agroecology on the food systems, and they do connect at different levels, from farms over landscapes, communities, all the way down to entire societies. As you might know, by today, the third lecture, it's a set of 5 public lectures, so there will be 2 more to come. And of course, in spring, we hope to have also these kind of public lectures on other principles which were not in the focus this year. Short words on the format. You will expect 2 presentations of roughly 20 minutes from both Judith and Toya. Then we will have a moderated Q&A session of around 10 to 15 minutes. In order to nurture this moderated Q&A session, please do use the Q&A function and share your questions with us. I will then transfer the questions to our speakers. After that, we will close the public part, and after a short break, the students will have the opportunity also to interact with the contributors after this public session. Without any further ado, it's a great pleasure to introduce Judith Gebede and Toya Betzola to both of you. They will introduce themselves. It's always a bit critical introducing others. I prefer to give them the floor to say what they believe is important to share with us. In that sense, Judith, I kindly ask you to take over the screen and share your insights with us. Thank you very much for being with us tonight. Judith, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. I'm very happy to be here again. I've been also last year in this lecture series, and it's a pleasure to be here again. So I'm Judith Gebede. I'm a researcher at this moment, researcher as an independent researcher and consultant, and currently consulting for different organizations, for BioVision Foundation, which is in Switzerland, as you know. I'm also consulting for FAO for developing some agroecology courses, especially actually focusing on Africa. Before that, I studied agronomy with a specialization in land and water management. And during my PhD, I specialized in landscape ecology. So really how actually to reduce pest impact and pest impact on maize without using any pesticides. And for this, I didn't have only, let's say, a technical approach, but really the social approach, which actually took into consideration the dynamics of landscape change over time, and also the perception and the vision of farmers on their landscape. And that allowed me to actually have a very much more holistic approach to my subject, and to integrate also the farmers' knowledge in the research process. So during this presentation this evening, I would like actually to share some of this work and some of this example, because that allows also to illustrate what social aspect can mean in the context of actually doing research, how you apply it, some of the methods or approaches that you can actually apply to better be cautious in taking also farmers' knowledge and take into account social aspects in the process of research, for example. So now I will start my presentation, but I will just to give you a bit what will be the step of my presentation. First, I will take you a bit a step back to make you understand why actually taking social values into agricultural research was actually something important, and how it came. It was not something which was taken into account in research spontaneously. That has been quite some historical evolution of it, and I would like to take some step back and give you a little bit of this historical development of taking more into account social aspect into research. And then I will give you some examples of how those aspects and the social components can be better taken into account in research in order to better address actually the needs of farmers, and also to produce research which has a better chance to have impact. And finally, I will also answer to one of the questions that also was raised in preparing this presentation, was like, what are the difficulties in taking more into account social aspects? of agroecology, and what are also some of the challenges we face in scaling up agroecology. So first of all, taking you a step back, so sustainability is a multidimensional concept, as you know. It takes into account economical and the production objective. It's also about sociocultural objective, and it's also about environmental objective, which these are also what agroecology is about, but it was also the foundation of what sustainable agriculture was how it was actually defined. However, for a long time, we have been actually more focusing on the economical and the production objective of agriculture. And why actually was this focus, and why was also like this more dominant agroecological, dominant conventional agriculture more taking over? It was because it was seen as something which was a success, which was bringing like a higher production in a very short time, and it was also giving the illusion of actually of wealth. Sorry for the slide, the text on the left. I just wanted to show you here on the left, on the right side for me. So the graphs and the success is not always what you see. So this, I think, for me, it's something which really illustrates very well sometimes what conventional agriculture and agroecological approach can actually look like. You know, this it can be shiny and a lot in the amount, but actually agroecological approaches can have benefits at different scale, and these are not always visible when you contabilize your cost and your production. So, but often the systems that are economically profitable are being actually ecologically unsustainable. Why? Because we have been we have been calculating differently. They have been calculating in the conventional agriculture without taking into account all what we call the externalities, so the hidden costs. So these are so impact that we can have actually on the environment, effect on the human health. All these kind of elements related to more conventional agriculture, modern agriculture, was not taken in the way we calculate actually the benefits of conventional agriculture. And it was also mostly based on the value of money. So it's all translated in money, and other aspects, some values which are beyond actually money were not always taken into account. For example, when you talk about values related to diversity of a diet, values related to some more cultural aspects of some food, some even like some religious components sometimes, which are also related to food and food system in some societies. So all these kind of components are not monetarized, are not taken into account in the way we contabilize conventional agriculture. So also even more natural capital, for example, organic matter, building organic matter on the long term, capturing the azote of the air. These are not elements that we are so much taken into account in conventional agriculture. So there are been like two sets of, let's say, philosophy, or two sets of concepts in actually trying to harness a bit those costs, and some were actually having more like a weak sustainability approach, whereas they were focusing just monetarizing those capital, like human capital or natural capital, mostly actually natural capital, to better actually reflect the cost-benefit analysis of agriculture. Others were actually talking about more an approach which is a strong sustainability, so about a green economy, where they actually highlight that it's not possible to give a monetary value to everything. So although the environmental economy aspect proposed to incorporate externalities, so there's an advantage of it, so into the cost benefit analysis through the pricing, so to actually maybe, for example, when you have an impact on an environment, when you are actually polluting, you have to pay a price for it. So the advantages make it visible, the impact that we do on the environment, but at the same time, it actually doesn't take into account all what we can value as human being. It doesn't take into account some environmental damage that are not visible, and that consider also that it's only one single indicator to measure environmental cost, always the monetary aspect, so the price. Having said that, like I found this kind of beautiful landscape of Switzerland. So when you are like talking about values and like how do you value that? What is this worth, for example? You know, this is not something that you can on which you can put only a monetary value on it. What about this, the diversity of seeds and that we have around the world, and that actually this diversity have been really eroded over time through conventional practices. How much will be worth? What is the value that you will give to it? And diversity of our food. On the left side, you have Ethiopian food. On the right side, this is more Japanese style. So these are all social and traditional components and capital that are not harnessed in the way we do cost value analysis in the conventional approaches. So that's why in the green economy, but also then later on, which actually also this actually feeding the agroecology mindset, we take into account all these components which go beyond the monetary aspect of agricultural production. So as I said, the diversity of our seeds, the diversity of our diets, and also take more into account several natural resources which are not actually renewable. So at the beginning of this lecture, I saw that you might refer more to the 13th principle of the HLPA. But as you know, the 10 elements of agroecology also have been defining, giving a framework for agroecology. And then it's one of the first time that you had a clear, let's say, integration of the social and economic and the environmental aspect, and clearly defined in a framework of what agroecology is. And this has been also a process which brought researchers, civil society, and government in the process of defining what are those elements. And that has also inspired actually the 13 principles. I mean, the 13 principles were have been also developed in a parallel, but you have a lot of similitude in both of these frameworks. So what is important to highlight here, so the social aspect that this 10 elements, for example, are considering are responsible governance, the human and social values, the co-creation and sharing of knowledge, the culture and food tradition, and synergies. So synergies between those different components, elements, but also the components of the element, the social, the environmental, and the economic aspect. I will give you then from my side some more examples on the co-creation and sharing of knowledge in the context of research. So how do you take into account some of those social aspects, and in particular in the context of research? Just last year, there was a publication from a group of researchers. They were called Ceres 2030, And they analyzed more than 100 articles, scientific publications on agricultural research, and they found that 95% of the publication, which were actually aiming at addressing issues related to small-scale farmers and food security aspects, 95% were actually not answering to the needs of small-scale farmers and not answering the food security issue in a way that's actually appropriate to small-scale farmers. So can you imagine that we are putting so much energy and money in doing research, in trying with with the best intention, in trying to provide some solution to reduce food security, but actually most of the research has no impact and is not even useful for the audience that they are targeting. Why is that? What is the problem with the way we are actually doing research? So I think, and that's not only me who thinks, but one of the reason, or the main reason actually, is that we are not taking into account the real needs and demands of farmers when we are doing research. So most of the research were not really participatory. We're not actually often taking into account really farmers, but it can be researchers doing the research on by themselves, even if it's with the objective to provide this result for farmers. But at the end of the day, as you know, articles are published and are more to another scientific audience, and the information and the results are actually never coming back to the farmers themselves, who have been contributing sometimes by their time, when they have been interviewed for the research, but who are actually often not benefiting from the research that we are doing. So there is really a need in reshaping and rethinking when we do research, and I try to do that also in my own research, and this is an example of what I did in my PhD thesis. I've been doing some participatory mapping where I've been combining farmers' knowledge and scientific data. So these are maps, for example, that you can ask farmers to draw, giving them just actually just the borders of, for example, of a municipality, and ask them to draw where the different land uses then are in their landscape. And you will be really surprised how actually accurately farmers have a very good overview of their landscape, not only right at the moment you're talking to them, but also over time. So what I did was to draw this kind of map on different timeline, and I did in parallel also some GIS and remote sensing analysis, and look at the changes of a landscape over time. And this is in Awasa region in the south of Ethiopia. And actually, while doing that, first of all, the information that I was finding, in both true knowledge, farmers' knowledge, and the scientific process was actually the same, but the fact of actually talking with the farmers gave me even more additional information on the type of crops, etc., things that I have not been able to have through only remote sensing information. So this is like one of the way where you can really see complementarity between farmers' knowledge, communities' knowledge, and also the scientific information that can feed each other to have like a better information. I've been doing that also with, like, even you can actually have, for example, graphs representing, surfaces of their farm, and look at how these have been changed, for example, over time. And here again, it was really in line with what we could actually also see through the remote sensing analysis. So one of the questions raised also in relation to the social values in the context of taking into account more social values in research, and why actually we are not gaining a wider adoption of agroecology. First, as you saw, most of the research that we are doing so far are actually not so much addressing the needs of the farmers. And one of the reasons is that in some contexts, the agroecology approach asks you a certain specificity in a certain context, and that's actually not something which is repeatable. It's not something at the big scale, and it's actually kind of is not always valued in the scientific area to actually being focusing on small maybe village or maybe some practices which are maybe from only one country. So there is also like the question of what we value in research, which is more into comparison between different research between different countries, or big scale thing, or like publishing in big impact factor journals, and less actually the really effectiveness and the interest of the research itself for the livelihood of people. Here is actually a picture, so several pictures showing you a product called NSET. It looked like a banana, but it actually it doesn't give any fruit. What is actually consumed is the root part, and the root is actually transformed, and there is like a kind of a hole which is made. This is a crop in Ethiopia, and this actually gets fermented, and then there are several byproducts also which actually coming out of this product, which can be fiber, and also the leaves are also used in bread baking. So you have a number of benefits that you can get from this product, this crop, and this crop is actually also the staple food for 15 million people. However, there is very little actually research done on this crop, and even less than by non-Ethiopian actors. The research will be more concentrated on maize, on wheat, etc. So this kind of crops which have a lot of value locally, and which actually are providing livelihood for so many people, also have very multifunctional aspects, and bringing different income and providing also a job for a number of actors, is actually not taken into account, and it will be completely a gap in the scientific knowledge, for example. One of the other reasons also that agroecology is not gaining a wider adoption is actually that agroecology said that it is knowledge intensive and it's labor intensive. So it's actually, of course, it's we have been more in the conventional systems, and more in the Occidental system. We have been used into using tractors, and also then to not reflect so much, and using some protocols in the way of farming. And now when you do agroecology, we actually have to unlearn what we have been learning as an agronom, and then bring a completely different vision to agriculture by taking into account different components, and also by going beyond the farm level. The idea is also to take into account actors which are beyond the farm, so not only farmers, but also different actors in the transformation, in the commercialization of products. So these actually require a completely different vision of the way we see agriculture, and also the type of agriculture, for example, or the way actually agroecology is also maybe promoted in the South, require some kind of small-scale mechanization, which is actually not available for now. And for now, it's mostly the labor of people, which is necessary. For example, for the transport of manure. A number of activities in agroecology are more labor intensive, and research have not been provided yet some of the tools which allow actually to overcome those challenges yet. Thank you very much. That's what I wanted to share with you tonight, and I welcome your questions.
Thank you very much, Judith. Before we take the questions, we hand over directly to Toya, the co-president of Slow Food Switzerland.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Judith. It was very interesting to listen to your perspective. And I think, well, I'm very glad you bring the research perspective on it. I'll take a little bit a different lens that is of a social movement that is really trying to put the social value of food into center of attention. I'm the co-president of Slow Food Switzerland. I'm also project manager at the World Food Systems Center, but for tonight, I'll take on the hat of Slow Food. Can you hear me well? Okay.
We hear you very well, Toya.
Perfect. Yes. So Slow Food Switzerland is the lens I'll be taking. If you come from another context or you have other examples, please also reach out to other slow food networks. It's going to be a bit of a European-centric perspective. When I was asked to talk about social values, first, well, I went back to that principle number 9, which is one of the 13 of the high-level panel of experts you are all very well aware of. And then I really thought about, well, what does that mean? What does social values mean for me and in the context of my work with slow food? That's interesting. Okay. So what I found is this definition. I'm sure there's many others out there, but it made sense in the context that I'm working. So social values are defined as standards which individuals and social groups employ to define personal goals and essentially shape the nature and form of social order in a collective. So that really means that social values say what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And a bit in line of what Judith said, also what is the origin of the slow food movement is that what has been seen is that food was really much, very much treated as a commodity and defined by a price that was far too low to pay livelihoods of people and to protect nature, biodiversity and health of the consumers and producers. So what was important for slow food and still is to show that food is not just a commodity, it's much more. It has a political dimension, it has cultural and social meaning, it has symbolic meaning, it is part of religious rights, it's part of many, many aspects of culture. And it's important that we start to put that back on the map. Interestingly enough, I also wanted to take a little bit of the history of slow food, like Judith did for the research. I think when we talk about social values and social aspects of subjects, we always need to take a bit of a historical perspective to understand where things are coming from, because nothing is ahistorical. Always something has developed, has transformed, comes from somewhere. So that says slow food has a snail as a symbol, and this is very much on purpose. It's a cultural movement that, when it started in the 1980s, was a movement that was very much against industrialization and mass production of food. It was against the narrative of efficiency and what we know is the green revolution and counting food on yields and calories, and really also what we saw, the global convergence of diets. And what slow food said was that, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. We're forgetting a whole aspect of food that is the traditions and culture that go with it and that belong to a local context. So at the beginning, Slow Food was an activist group that was demonstrating against the opening of the first fast food restaurant in Rome, the first McDonald's in Italy. And that was in 1986. It was then founded in Paris and the first manifesto is signed. I wanted to read you a little bit from the manifesto, but I think we won't have time. If you find time, I'll post the link to the chat. I think it's really interesting to see the language that they're using to counter the narrative of that time, well, still today, of faster, more efficient, higher yields, etc. And already in 1993, Slow Food Switzerland, as one of the first national organizations, was founded. So we're celebrating 30 years in Switzerland next year. And in 1996, the first Salone del Gusto was launched together with the Arc of Taste project. I'll tell you a little bit later about this, but it's one of the most important projects that Slow Food has created. Then in 2004, I really picked a bit what I show. I mean, there's many other things that happened, but in 2004, Slow Food opened their own university in Italy, in Pollenza, the University of Gastronomic Sciences. And in 2015, the Terra Madre Giovani, as a counter event to the then Expo in Milano, was held by the Slow Food Youth Network, where over 2,000 producers from all over the world went to Milano to demonstrate against the expo that was held by the multinationals at that time. In 2021, which is the latest numbers that I know, over 1,600 local convivias and communities all over the world are active under the umbrella of Slow Food within 160 countries. So it really is a global movement. I mean, this is not official. I just pulled together my knowledge to show you a little bit. I think what is interesting with this movement and relevant for agroecology is that it's very much an example for the think global and act local idea. So we have Slow Food International, a headquarters in Italy, where it all come from. We have some national organizations, 12 at the moment, some of them very new, but most importantly, we have the local convivias. And that's where all the action, the networking, the events are happening. So all over the world in these 1,600 convivias and communities, people are organizing platforms, projects, educational programs, etc. And then also what has recently developed more and more are thematic and specialized interest networks as well. So such as the Slow Food Youth Network for the younger generation, or the Indigenous Terra Madre network as well, which is super important. So what glues all those people and networks together? It is the common vision and the values that Slow Food defined at the very beginning. The vision of Slow Food is to change the world through food that is good, clean, and fair for all. And this is super important and relevant in all parts of the world. Good meaning, and I think that's interesting because that's an aspect that not in many other organizations are present. Good meaning quality and flavorsome healthy food. So what we also do is sensory workshops to educate consumers on how does actually a product taste? How can I differentiate quality, or how can I taste quality of a product? Then clean food, meaning that protects the environment, ecosystems, the biodiversity, but also the health of consumers and producers. And then fair food, that means accessible prices for consumers, but also, and most importantly, fair conditions in the production and the pay that pays for livelihood and well-being of producers. Then how does this broad vision go into action? Recently, Slow Food International in a participatory process has defined 3 pillars of action for the global slow food movement. And it's then really up to each local convivia how to pick it up and how to translate this into a project. The first is to educate, inspire, and mobilize people. The second is to advocate, meaning to influence politics in public and private spheres. And the third one is to protect biodiversity and cultural cultural diversity. This is interesting because for slow food, cultural diversity is very much linked to the protection of biodiversity. Because if we are talking small-scale producers linked to a local context, a local terroir with food traditions in that, and local breeds and varieties, then that is already a circumstance where we know that it protects ecosystems and biodiversity. So it's important to keep that knowledge about food traditions and the local agrobiodiversity to be able to protect the nature there as well. Right, so one project that I wanted to present to you as an example of the work of slow food within this pillar of action is the Arc of Taste. It is one of the oldest projects, and the aim is to really to protect traditional foods and agricultural diversity. And you can, well, anyone can nominate products in their local context that should be protected because it is endangered to extinct, for example. At the moment, there's over 5,700 products that are listed and online, available online, so you can actually look it up. And those products are listed within 150 countries. So if you're interested in discovering some new products, I really highly recommend to look at the website there of the Foundation of Slow Food. Within Switzerland, we are very active in that domain. We have 77 ARCE products, and of which 20 are Presidi products. The Presidi products are even more so products or projects that we support in gaining market access, in developing new products, in increasing visibility as well. So what we do is we organize yearly workshops around those products. We do a lot of communication and storytelling, but most importantly, we also organize the slow food markets in Switzerland for those products. Because we can tell the story as many times as we want. In the end, it's super important that the producers can actually sell their product to a reasonable price, and that's where the markets come in as well. And a second project that is a bit younger, but I think links nicely to the work that is done with the protecting the local food traditions in terms of products, is the new network of slow food cooks, the Slow Food Cooks Alliance network. It was launched in 2009 and is now in about 20 countries. Worldwide, we have over 1,000 cooks that are member in this network. In Switzerland, we already have 100. So we're in Switzerland quite ahead with that project and also internationally well connected. The idea behind this is really that the cook is a translator between the producer and the consumer. It can help tell the story of a local cuisine, of traditional foods, and bring back the pride and the identity that goes with that food. So it's super important to find those ambassadors and connect them with each other to learn from each other, but also to connect them to the products of the Arc of Taste, the Presidi products of slow food, so that they can start collaborating with the producers in their area. You can see it's very much a network and a network approach to how we do the projects. Oops. And just quickly, because I talk for Switzerland or from a Swiss perspective, within Switzerland, we are an member association. We have about 4,000 members. We have a little head office in Zurich in Switzerland with 6 wonderful team members that are doing the overarching Swiss projects. But then we have 19 local convivia. All of them are independent associations with their own boards and their own event program, their own activities, where they visit producers, organize local markets, community tables, you name it, and where they interact directly with the members in their area. Then we also have a Slow Food Youth Network in Switzerland that is very active. And we have a permanent ARC commission that is pushing the nomination of products. And we have a political commission that is regaining importance, or the more and more gaining importance. From the logic, I just quickly wanted to show you also, when we talk about the 3 pillars of action, it's super important that we take the projects to actually then move from the strategy and the goals to enact change. And this is just how it's done. Here I chose in each pillar 2 projects, just to show you a bit that then we're really going into action within the projects as tools. One is sensory workshops. I mentioned them already. The second one at the bottom with Educate, you can see is a slow mobile, is a caravan that is going around schools, primary schools, to educate people on food issues such as food waste, but also educate them on seasonal foods and how to prepare foods from field to fork. This is a very successful association that is now also independent. And then I chose a picture from a demonstration from the Terra Madre Giovani in 2015. This is in the midst of the Expo area, where you see demonstrations. And in the middle there, you can see Emanuele from the Swiss delegation. And the second picture for influence is a food safe banquet in Zurich that is held yearly and together with other organizations to raise awareness on food waste issues by sharing food with the wider public. And there again, we invite some of our cooks from the Alliance Network to cook some delicious food from food waste. Under Protect, you can see as one of these slow food markets. Ooh la la, sorry. Here, pardon me. You can see the slow food market where we bring it together consumers and producers to really exchange, but also to create a market access. And then the last but not least picture there at the bottom right is a picture from our very new slow wine project. We launched it last year, and it is bringing together wine producers in Switzerland that really care about biodiversity and protecting nature within their vineyards. So just, I mean, there's many others, so I had to choose to give an idea. And then to come back on the thoughts of social values and why slow food can make a stand there is really because it shows that one has to acknowledge the cultural, social, but also political value of food. We cannot just ignore that food is heavily involved in politics and in culture. Food is a key resource for local identity, and it can be a source of pride, bringing and empowering people, bringing them together around issues. It is an asset to support livelihoods and to protect local culture, traditions, but also nature and terroir, so ecosystems in a place. And what we find at Slow Food, food is really also an opportunity to bring people together, to share different perspectives, to create a dialogue that goes across borders, cultures, generations, you name it. So I think one important thing that we can learn from Slow Food is that we can use food to create change if we want to, and we can do it with a lot of joy and with a lot of fun, because yeah, that's what we do, right? If we enjoy food, we also treat food in a different way. We give it another value. It's not just a commodity anymore. What next? So what I see in the movement very much is that we will continue to protect traditional food products. It's a very important work to be done, to give value to food culture and traditions, to bring back the pride to local communities for their food cultures, and to create those platforms where people can connect. But also in the future, slow food most probably will be more political, more activist in what they do, because more and more the quest for sustainable food systems and food system transformation becomes very urgent. We are losing time and the trends are not looking good. So also what Slow Food Switzerland wants to do is really look into alliances with other organizations to create also a political change. And symbolically, I choose this picture to close the presentation. This is the new board of Slow Food International that was elected this summer at the 8th International Congress. And there in the middle, you can see Eddie Mukibi. He is the former director of Slow Food Uganda, and he's now the new Slow Food president for Slow Food International. He is a trained agronomist and was involved, or still is, I'm not sure, but he comes from the agroecology movement also in Uganda and has worked very much there on the education programs for agroecology. So I really like to see this change in generation, but also an increased diversity in who is having a voice in the organization and who can participate in the organization, to see that we're going somewhere and we're actually creating change also within the movement. And there is a next generation of leaders coming, which makes me very hopeful. And I'm very much looking forward to ongoing discussions and creating change together. So with that, I wanted to close and thank you all for your attention. Please keep in touch. Hopefully see you soon at some event, or yeah, if you have a question, you can always contact me. Yeah, I put the email address there.
Thank you, Toya. Thank you, Judith, for these very complementary presentations, sharing different perspectives on the same topic. Thank you very much indeed. We have a few questions in the chat or in the Q&A. So I would like to start with a very short question to Judith. Maybe there is a short answer too. Let's see. Why is research not looking at NSET, Judith?
Thank you for this question. Well, actually, the answer is not short, but there are several reasons. One of the reasons is actually that in general, in the African context, there is not so much money allocated in agricultural research. At several moments, African government promised to give a certain percentage of their national budget, up even to 10%, but actually we are still very far from it. So generally speaking, there is little research for national research in the context in African countries. But then the following aspect is actually then when the governments are lacking into doing their own national research, there are more international research organizations doing research, in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America. And one of these big international organizations doing research is like the CGR group, so the consortium of organizations in agriculture, which are historically, they have been focusing in commodities. They have been divided by commodities. So you have one focusing only on potato, one focusing only on wheat and corn, another will be focusing on just water management. So actually, in a way, this is really not what agroecology will prone as an approach. It's not holistic. Everyone is actually just working on one crop and not having this this holistic approach. Saying that, then this kind of organization will focus on crops which have values like globally. So potato, corn, wheat are consumed internationally, while NSAID, is actually only consumed in Ethiopia. Even if it's actually consumed by 15 million people, it still is actually something which is only consumed in Ethiopia. So there is less, let's say, economic interest for those organizations to invest research or their interest into this crop. So that's some of the reasons actually why NSAID has not been so much researched.
Thank you, Judith, for this answer. It's fair to also say that CGR went through a reform, and hopefully things are changing a bit in terms of breaking down silos with their agroecology program. But yeah, thank you very much for this insight of being focused on certain crops only. Toya, a question, or actually two questions for you, and linked to it, a big thank you for your presentation. So the question is, how do you define accessible price, or what do you view as accessible? And linked to it, the second question from the same guest, from your perspective, how can we ensure that all parts of society have access basically to organic food, especially with regard to the current food price increase? So what happens with accessibility in times where prices increase?
Thank you very much. It's a super important question, and actually one that I think about a lot the last weeks, and I'm very worried about the development that we're seeing, and there is no easy answer to this, because what we see is that we have a rise in hunger, in food insecurity. We have those trends, and we also have trends in raising disparities between income and wealth. And I think it's too short to just discuss about the prices and like lowering or pushing the prices of food, because that's not, in my view, not the solution. Because then you're again pressing the farmers who are producing the food. So I think we need to take a step back and stop always either pressuring the consumer or pressuring the producers. But we need to think more holistically, and well, what's wrong overall in the system, that we're actually in these two extremes of two sides that are really struggling in some parts of the world to produce and live from it, and also to consume and stay healthy from the food people are eating. We're not even talking about hunger. And I think that this issue is much bigger than just the food system. It's our system as a society that is wrong. Why can it be that people cannot live from producing food, for example? And this is not solved by adjusting a bit the prices. I mean, there's interesting concepts of calculating true cost of food and for example, internalizing some of the externalities that Judith was talking about. And this is certainly one aspect, but I think we need to more generally rediscuss of how do we organize a society and what is a just society for us. I'm very critical, and I think we need some societal change for the food system to be more just, because we can't solve it just by adjusting prices. Yes, and then the other question of access and organic food. I mean, it's also a whole question of designing, I don't know, designing cities designing food value chains. I mean, it's a whole thing, and that's the thing, right? Food systems is so transdisciplinary, so interdisciplinary, and we need to put food as an important issue on the table for everyone, for developing regions, for architects, everywhere. Otherwise, we're not going to solve this problem.
Thank you very much for being brave to go into this very complex issue. There was another comment on better sources on the 13 principles. I saw that Judith already shared one publication which describes the 13 principles a bit better, but I would just invite all the visitors of our public lecture, maybe also until next time, to share their preferred publications on the 13 principles of agroecology. I'm sure that our students would profit from this too. So please share good publication you want to share with us and the entire audience. Maybe I know that you're typing the answer to the one question I wanted to maybe close this session with. The question was whether you're, and also linked with big thanks for your presentation, but the question was, are you able to give some examples of labor-intense areas of agroecology that would have the potential to be mechanized in order to reduce the labor burden?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things is the way mechanization has been developed in agriculture so far, which actually for helping, of course, to reduce the burden of agricultural work, has been focusing mostly on large farms. So what we have is like huge tractors, huge threshing machines, and everything is actually thought for more conventional systems. And when you go, when you do agroecology is in general in smaller scale, and there are not so many tools or mechanization system which are adapted to small scale farming, which will actually use even much less fuel, etc. But there have not been a lot of work done, or a lot of research done yet, and there is still a lot to be done. I mean, there are some research, but is still not answering to all the needs that we have. I'm sharing right now here the link to a cooperative, and it's a group, it's an association, yeah, a cooperative. They are working with farmers for developing tools which are really adapted to their needs, and it's actually a small scale. It's called Atelier Paysan. They work in France, but they also work in Africa. And they also do tools in a way that farmers are actually able to repair them. So they are against, you know, the fact that you have those big machines and actually you are completely dependent. You need to borrow money from banks, so you're completely in debt for ages, and you increase your dependency as a farmer when buying these big machines. And at the same time, you're not even able to repair it yourself. So you also have the cost of maintenance, etc. So they develop small-scale mechanization and allow also farmers to really, teach also farmers to repair them. But actually, they also even develop those mechanization in relation, in discussion with farmers, because they actually know what they need. And it's not just a mechanical engineer external to farming, which will know what actually the best tool for a farmer, but in discussion with the farmers, and actually they propose adapted small-scale mechanization. Another thing is also that when we talk about mechanization, it doesn't mean a huge thing. It doesn't mean like any really like machinery, like really needing a lot of brain actually to put together. For example, in the context of Africa, even just a cart, en français une brouette, just a cart, to transport material, you know, from one place to another at the farm level. There are a lot of the farmers, they don't have that. So it's as simple, it can be as simple as that, this kind of tools, which actually can facilitate transport of manures within the farm, also between farms, and use less also, sometimes, you know, in the context of Africa, they use, they are still holding just by themselves on their back, etc. So all kind of small things like this, which can actually facilitate the life of farmers in the context of Africa, and also here in the context of agroecological farmers in Europe.
Thank you very much, Judith. Time is running really fast, so I think we come to an end with thanking you, Toya and Judith, for being with us, sharing your insights, and also to the audience for sharing publications, their question, and fueling these discussions. I'm looking forward to the next round of discussions next week, same time. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us tonight. Thank you, Toya. Thank you, Judith.